Hey, I'm back with another book review. Um, if you noticed, I got a little bit of sun. This this shirt goes down. I just yeah, I got a bit of sun, so I got a bit of a suntan there. But I'd like to review Joan Didion's "Slouching Towards Bethlehem." Get that up close so you can see it. It's very nice, very '60s looking design, and it has these kind of mandala looking flowers on the chapter heads. So, what I'd like to say about this book is partially, I think she's at a point in her life when she writes this when she's breaking into Hollywood and breaking into the scene as a Hollywood writer, and she's coming to terms with the effects of Hollywood on society. And um, what this is a series of essays or articles that she wrote for magazines. I'll give you an example. So she says at the beginning of this book, in the acknowledgments, is some of them were from New York Times Magazine, uh, a publication called Holiday, The American Scholar, Vogue. Some of them were from Vogue, the Saturday Evening Post. It looks like most of them were from the Saturday Evening Post, and some of them had different names as well. So there, and the longest one in this book is actually called "Slouching Towards Bethlehem," which is um, her experiences living in the Haight Ashbury scene in 1960s San Francisco. So these are all taking place, some of them in early 60s and some of them later on in the late 60s. I think it goes up to about 1967. I'm not sure exactly when. Let's look at this. Published 1968. So it's about 1967, I think, is the latest one. And okay, you might think, well, how relevant is this today? Well, okay, I have to admit, reading some of it, it was a little antiquated. Some of it, uh, they're not so many of these people. Like, she has an obsession with, as a writer, as a Hollywood writer at the time, she has a bit of an obsession with F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was also a Hollywood writer with him and his wife Zelda. And it's a little antiquated. I can't say that it's totally it's totally 100% relevant to us these days. But in the same sense, you can trace a lot of what's going on in the world today, like with the protesting and the riots and the racial, uh, I guess if you want to call it profiling, and what's going on with that. And you can trace it back to a lot of the things that are happening in the world when she was writing these things, and has been going on in a systemic way for many, many years. So, yeah, in that sense, it can be relevant. And most of this has to do with, I think, a lot of Hollywood's impact on society. And she doesn't actually put her finger on what specifically is wrong with Hollywood. She just says it's not this, but it just it has a certain not working type of sense to it. And then she goes into a lot of different kind of niche type things. Like, she talks about this one, um, the what was it, the it's not the socialist, it's like the Marxist, what do you call that, yeah, the leader of the Communist Party at the time in the States. And he had like 40 followers or something like that, and he's just protesting, and going on about his thing, and he has this publication and no one reads it, and she does a profile of him and they publish it in some sort of magazine, and it's kind of like, um, this makes up like underground society, and the society that a lot of these people who have absolutely no voice, almost no voice, and they're saying something completely different than the world at large in America at the time, and it's it's quite odd. And then there's the first one. It struck me is that it's this woman who, um, wants her husband's insurance money and gets charged with murdering him in some sort of shady looking, not accidental death that she caused. And the best one, I mean, the title is Slouching Towards Bethlehem. The best one, if you're just taking it for, without looking at it as a cultural kind of expose, it's is probably the best one in talking about the kind of like hippie culture of Haight-Ashbury scene in San Francisco in the 60s, which is quite long. It's the longest piece in this book. And so overall, I think it's a great book. I recommend it definitely if you want some information on, if you're doing like a history class on like a, um, film class for like a university or something like that. This is a good, book where you can get a lot of information on, historical opinion on film from this day and age. And she even breaks into talking about some famous European filmmakers also. And I don't have the experience of watching any of her movies. I may have, I don't really know for sure because it's not something I looked for when I was watching movies, as I was growing up. But and it's not a name I would have recognized when I was a kid either. But I don't know if she felt satisfied that she kind of to have, gone the other way with her films, like as in to not play out the cliche of movies that she claims there is, in America at the time and following. So I read another one of her books, The White Album, and it's a little bit darker, I would say, than this one, and probably it's less cohesive in a sense, than this one, in that it mainly talks about the actual people involved, or the actual people involved with, film and music. So she actually gets up close and talks to them and experiences what their lifestyles are like. And it's almost like that almost a famous effect where she gets caught up with everything that's happening in the music and the movies, and she starts living that lifestyle, and she can't decide if she's part of it or not, and she's still got to write all about the, exploits of the movies. So that's the White Album. It's called the White Album, even though the Beatles album is called the White Album. So there's a Joan Didion book called the White Album. But this is an excellent book, and something must be said about her writing. She just has an excellent writing style. It oozes just style and character, and just eloquence, anything you could say good about writing, and she exudes all of those things, which is very, very nice of me to say, I guess, but true at the same time. So the way that so one of the things that I like is she doesn't, and this is from a time when you didn't have like word processors and things like online thesauruses. Like, she actually had to know these words, like words that just come out of nowhere, and actually means specifically, just with one word without describing in the long paragraph, exactly what she means and exactly what she wants to say. So, just the, I guess, incisive kind of conciseness of the way that she writes is just excellent, and I love it. So I definitely recommend this book. It is potentially a source of information as a nonfiction book for someone studying film, or even I guess counterculture, underground culture in the '60s, and just anyone who would like to study the history of kind of like maybe the ill-fated beginnings of modern history, something like that. If you want to, I mean, I'm just off the cuff. I have no idea. I wasn't prepared to say anything, but it's a difficult book to describe because there's a lot of different things coming from a lot of different places, and it's all mostly about California, but a lot of different headspaces, and to put it all together into one thing is quite difficult, but it's all works cohesive into a just map or image or picture of what America was like at the time, especially in California. So check it out. It's a good book, and the writing is excellent. And before I go, I got this book. It's a Canadian book, and if anyone has any interest in it, it looks quite interesting to me. I can't go into much of the details because I've gone quite long with the video already, but I'm going to try and review this. I don't review everything that I read. There are a few books that I read before doing this review today, and I haven't reviewed them, and I'm not going to, but this one, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, I particularly liked. So onward and upward, I guess, as they say. Take care.